FROMTHEEARTHTOTHEMOON CHAPTER1 THEGUN CLUB. During the War of the Rebellion, a new and influential club was established in the city of Baltimore in the state of Maryland. It is well known with what energy the taste for military matters became developed among that nation of ship owners, shopkeepers, and mechanics. Simple tradesmen jumped their counters to become extemporized captains, colonels, and generals without having ever passed the school of instruction at West Point. Nevertheless, they quickly rivaled their compeers of the old continent and, like them, carried off victories by dint of lavish expenditure in ammunition, money, and men. But the point in which the Americans singularly distanced the Europeans was in the science of gunnery, not, indeed, that their weapons retained a higher degree of perfection than theirs, but that they exhibited unheard of dimensions and consequently attained hitherto unheard of ranges in point of grazing, plunging, oblique, or enfilading, or point-blank firing. The English, French, and Prussians have nothing to learn, but their cannon, howitzers, and mortars are mere pocket pistols compared with the formidable engines of the American artillery. This fact need surprise no one. The Yankees, the first mechanicians in the world, are engineers just as the Italians are musicians, and the Germans metaphysicians be right of birth. Nothing is more natural, therefore, than to perceive them applying their audacious ingenuity to the science of gunnery. Witness the marvels of Parrott, Dahlgren, and Rodman. The Armstrong, Palliser, and Bolu guns were compelled to bow before their transatlantic rivals. Now, when an American has an idea, he directly seeks a second American to share it. If there be three, they elect a president and two secretaries. Given four, they name a keeper of records, and the office is ready for work. 5. They convene a general meeting, and the club is fully constituted. So things were managed in Baltimore. The inventor of a new cannon associated himself with the caster and the borer. Thus was formed the nucleus of the gun club. In a single month after its formation, it numbered 1,833 effective members and 30,565 corresponding members. One condition was imposed as a sine qua non upon every candidate for admission into the association, and that was the condition of having designed, or more or less, perfected a cannon, or, in default of a cannon, at least a firearm of some description. It may, however, be mentioned that mere inventors of revolvers, fire-shooting carbines, and similar small arms met with little consideration. Artillerists always commanded the chief place of favor. The estimation in which these gentlemen were held, according to one of the most scientific exponents of the gun club, was proportional to the masses of their guns, and in the direct ratio of the square of the distances attained by their projectiles. The gun club once founded, it is easy to conceive the result of the inventive genius of the Americans. Their military weapons attained colossal proportions, and their projectiles, exceeding the prescribed limits, unfortunately occasionally cut into some unoffending pedestrians. These inventions, in fact, left far in the rear the timid instruments of European artillery. It is but fair to add that these Yankees, brave as they have ever proved themselves to be, did not confine themselves to theories and formulae, but that they paid heavily, in propria person, for their inventions. Among them were to be counted officers of all ranks, from lieutenants to generals, military men of every age, from those who were just making their debut in the profession of arms up to those who had grown old in the gun carriage. Many had found their rest on the field of battle, whose names figured in the Book of Honor of the Gun Club, and of those who made good their return the greater proportion, bore the marks of their indisputable valor: crutches, wooden legs, artificial arms, steel hooks, caoutchouc jaws, silver craniums, platinum noses, were all to be found in the collection. And it was calculated by the great statistician, Pitcairn, that throughout the gun club, there was not quite one arm between 4 persons, and 2 legs between 6. Nevertheless, these valiant artillerists took no particular account of these little facts, and felt justly proud when the dispatches of a battle returned the number of victims at tenfold the quantity of projectiles expended. One day, however, sad and melancholy day, peace was signed between the survivors of the war. The thunder of the guns gradually ceased, the mortars were silent, the howitzers were muzzled for an indefinite period, the cannon, with muzzles depressed, were returned into the arsenal, the shot were repiled, all bloody reminiscences were effaced. The cotton plants grew luxuriantly in the well-manned fields, all mourning garments were laid aside, together with grief, and the gun club was relegated to profound inactivity. Some few of the more advanced and inveterate theorists set themselves again to work upon calculations regarding the laws of projectiles. They reverted invariably to gigantic shells and howitzers of unparalleled caliber. Still in default of practical experience, what was the value of mere theories? Consequently, the clubrooms became deserted, the servants dozed in the antechambers, the newspapers grew moldy on the tables, sounds of snoring came from dark corners, and the members of the gun club, erstwhile so noisy in their scenes, were reduced to silence by this disastrous peace, and gave themselves up wholly to dreams of a platonic kind of artillery. "This is horrible," said Tom Hunter one evening, while rapidly carbonizing his wooden legs in the fireplace of the smoking room. "Nothing to do, nothing to look forward to. What a loathsome existence! When again shall the guns arouse us in the morning with their delightful reports?" "Those days are gone by," said Jolly Bilsby, trying to extend his missing arms. "It was delightful once upon a time. One invented a gun, and hardly was it cast, when one hastened to try it in the face of the enemy. Then one returned to camp with a word of encouragement from Sherman, or a friendly shake of the hand from McClellan, but now the generals are gone back to their counters, and in place of projectiles, they dispatch bales of cotton. By Jove, the future of gunnery in America is lost. And no war in prospect," continued the famous James T. Maston, scratching with his steel hook his gua percha cranium, "not a cloud on the horizon. And that too at such a critical period in the progress of the science of artillery? Yes, gentlemen, I who address you have myself this very morning perfected a model plan, section, elevation, etc., of a mortar, destined to change all the conditions of warfare." "No, is it possible?" replied Tom Hunter, his thoughts reverting involuntarily to a former invention of the Hon. J.T. Maston, by which, at its first trial, he had succeeded in killing 337 people. "Fact," replied he, "still, what is the use of so many studies worked out, so many difficulties vanquished? It's mere waste of time. The New World seems to have made up its mind to live in peace. And our bellicose tribune predicts some approaching catastrophes arising out of this scandalous increase of population." "Nevertheless," replied Colonel Blomsberry, "they are always struggling in Europe to maintain the principle of nationalities, Well, there might be some field for enterprise down there. And if they would accept our services. What are you dreaming of? Screamed Bilsby. Work at gunnery for the benefit of foreigners. That would be better than doing nothing here, returned the Colonel. Quite so, said J.T. Matson. But still we need not dream of that expedient. And why not? Demanded the Colonel. Because their ideas of progress in the old world are contrary to our American habits of thought. Those fellows believe that one can't become a general without having served first as an ensign, which is as much as to say that one can't point a gun without having first cast it oneself. Ridiculous, replied Tom Hunter, whittling with his bowie knife the arms of his easy chair. But if that be the case there, all that is left for us is to plant tobacco and distill whale oil. What, roared J.T. Maston, shall we not employ these remaining years of our life in perfecting firearms? Shall there never be a fresh opportunity of trying the ranges of projectiles? Shall the air never again be lighted with the glare of our guns? No international difficulty ever arise to enable us to declare war against some transatlantic power? Shall not the French sink one of our steamers, or the English, in defiance of the rights of nations, hang a few of our countrymen? No such luck, replied Colonel Blomsberry. Nothing of the kind is likely to happen, and even if it did, we should not profit by it. American susceptibility is fast declining, and we are all going to the dogs. It is too true, replied J.T. Maston with fresh violence. There are 1,000 grounds for fighting, and yet we don't fight. We save up our arms and legs for the benefit of nations who don't know what to do with them, but stop without going out of one's way to find a cause for war. Did not North America once belong to the English? Undoubtedly, replied Tom Hunter, stamping his crutch with fury. Well, then, replied J.T. Maston, why should not England in her turn belong to the Americans? It would be but just and fair, returned Colonel Blomsberry. Go and propose it to the President of the United States, cried J.T. Maston, and see how he will receive you. Bah, growled Bilsby between the 4 teeth which the war had left him. That will never do. By Jove, cried J.T. Maston, he mustn't count on my vote at the next election. Nor on ours, replied unanimously all the bellicose invalids. Meanwhile, replied J.T. Maston, allow me to say that, if I cannot get an opportunity to try my new mortars on a real field of battle, I shall say goodbye to the members of the gun club and go and bury myself in the prairies of Arkansas. In that case we will accompany you, cried the others. Matters were in this unfortunate condition, and the club was threatened with approaching dissolution, when an unexpected circumstance occurred to prevent so deplorable a catastrophe. On the morrow after this conversation, every member of the association received a sealed circular couched in the following terms. Baltimore, October 3rd. The president of the Gun Club has the honor to inform his colleagues that, at the meeting of the 5th instant, he will bring before them a communication of an extremely interesting nature. He requests, therefore, that they will make it convenient to attend in accordance with the present invitation. Very cordially, Impey, Barbicane, PGC. CHAPTER 2. President Barbicane's communication. On the 5th of October, at 8 p.m. a dense crowd pressed toward the saloons of the gun club at number 21 Union Square. All the members of the association resident in Baltimore attended the invitation of their president. As regards the corresponding members, notices were delivered by hundreds throughout the streets of the city, and large as was the great hall, it was quite inadequate to accommodate the crowd of savants. They overflowed into the adjoining rooms, down the narrow passages, into the outer courtyards. There they ran against the vulgar herd, who pressed up to the doors, each struggling to reach the front ranks, all eager to learn the nature of the important communication of President Barbicane. All pushing, squeezing, crushing with that perfect freedom of action, which is so peculiar to the masses when educated in ideas of self-government. On that evening a stranger, who might have chanced to be in Baltimore, could not have gained admission for love or money into the great hall that was reserved exclusively for resident or corresponding members. No one else could possibly have obtained a place, and the city magnates, municipal councilors, and select men were compelled to mingle with the mere townspeople in order to catch stray bits of news from the interior. Nevertheless, the vast hall presented a curious spectacle. Its immense area was singularly adapted to the purpose. Lofty pillars formed of cannon, superposed upon huge mortars as a base, supported the fine ironwork of the arches, a perfect piece of cast iron lacework. Trophies of blunderbusses, matchlocks, arquebuses, carbines, all kinds of firearms, ancient and modern, were picturesquely interlaced against the walls. The gas lit up in full glare myriads of revolvers grouped in the form of lustres, while groups of pistols, and candelabra formed of muskets bound together, completed this magnificent display of brilliance, models of cannon, bronze castings, sights covered with dents, plates battered by the shots of the gun club, assortments of rammers and sponges, chaplets of shells, wreaths of projectiles, garlands of howitzers, in short, all the apparatus of the artillerist enchanted the eye by this wonderful arrangement, and induced a kind of belief that their real purpose was ornamental rather than deadly. At the further end of the saloon the president, assisted by 4 secretaries, occupied a large platform. His chair, supported by a carved gun carriage, was modeled upon the ponderous proportions of a 32-inch mortar. It was pointed at an angle of 90 degrees and suspended upon truncheons, so that the president could balance himself upon it as upon a rocking chair. A very agreeable fact in the very hot weather. Upon the table a huge iron plate supported upon 6 carronades stood an inkstand of exquisite elegance, made of a beautifully chased Spanish piece, and a sonnet which, when required, could give forth a report equal to that of a revolver. During violent debates, this novel kind of bell scarcely sufficed to drown the clamor of these excitable artillerists. In front of the table benches arranged in zigzag form, like the circumvallations of a retrenchment, formed a succession of bastions and curtains, set apart for the use of the members of the club. And on this especial evening, one might say, all the world was on the ramparts. The president was sufficiently well known, however, for all to be assured that he would not put his colleagues to discomfort without some very strong motive. M.P. Barbicane was a man of 40 years of age, calm, cold, austere, of a singularly serious and self-contained demeanor, punctual as a chronometer, of imperturbable temper and immovable character, by no means chivalrous, yet adventurous withal, and always bringing practical ideas to bear upon the very rashest enterprises. an essentially New Englander, a northern colonist, a descendant of the old anti-Stuart Roundheads, and the implacable enemy of the gentlemen of the South, those ancient cavaliers of the mother country. In a word, he was a Yankee to the backbone. Barbicane had made a large fortune as a timber merchant. Being nominated director of artillery during the war, he proved himself fertile in invention, bold in his conceptions. He contributed powerfully to the progress of that arm, and gave an immense impetus to experimental researches. He was personage of the middle height, having, by a rare exception in the gun club, all his limbs complete. His strongly marked features seemed drawn by square and rule. And if it be true that, in order to judge a man's character, one must look at his profile, Barbicane, so examined, exhibited the most certain indications of energy, audacity, and sang-froid. At this moment, he was sitting in his armchair, silent, absorbed, lost in reflection, sheltered under his high-crowned hat, a kind of black cylinder, which always seems firmly screwed upon the head of an American. Just when the deep-toned clock in the great hall struck 8, Barbicane, as if he had been set in motion by a spring, raised himself up. A profound silence ensued, and the speaker, in a somewhat emphatic tone of voice, commenced as follows. My brave colleagues, too long already a paralyzing peace, has plunged the members of the Gun Club in deplorable inactivity. After a period of years full of incidents, we have been compelled to abandon our labors and to stop short on the road of progress. I do not hesitate to state, boldly, that any war which would recall us to arms would be welcome. Tremendous applause. But war, gentlemen, is impossible under existing circumstances. And, however we may desire it, many years may elapse before our cannon shall again thunder in the field of battle. We must make up our minds, then, to seek in another train of ideas some field for the activity which we all pine for. The meeting felt that the President was now approaching the critical point, and redoubled their attention accordingly. For some months past, my brave colleagues, continued Barbicane, I have been asking myself whether, while confining ourselves to our own particular objects, we could not enter upon some grand experiment worthy of the 19th century, and whether the progress of artillery science would not enable us to carry it out to a successful issue. I have been considering, working, calculating. And the result of my studies is the conviction that we are safe to succeed in an enterprise which to any other country would appear wholly impracticable. This project, the result of long elaboration, is the object of my present communication. It is worthy of yourselves, worthy of the antecedents of the Gun Club, and it cannot fail to make some noise in the world.